Time-restricted feeding involves daily fasting intervals ranging from 11 to 21 hours. One of the most popular forms of this weight loss and weight control fasting approach that we see in the mainstream press and social media is the 16-8 fast, where one fasts 16 hours a day, including sleeping, and then eats within an 8-hour window each day. Unfortunately, there seems to be almost no human studies of this approach to weight loss in the scientific literature. I mean almost zero, zilch. Despite this lack of establishment science data, this is an extremely popular approach in social media, with countless anecdotal accounts of how effective it is. In addition, it makes total scientific sense, and the math adds up for why you lose weight. Since there are so few studies in humans, let's first look at the findings from animal studies. Although animal studies are not directly translatable to humans, they are worth mentioning because the effects are so compelling. Time-restricted feeding studies in organisms used for research, like mice and flies, have demonstrated that it can result in many metabolic and health benefits. For these organisms, time-restricted feeding has been shown to lower body weight, lower body fat, lower fasting blood glucose, lower blood cholesterol, and reduce inflammation. In addition, in animals, time-restricted feeding has also been shown to increase energy expenditure. In other words, it increases the amount of calories you burn. It has also been shown to improve gut health, improve coordination, improve endurance, improve sleep, and improve cardiac function. Keep in mind, with these studies, all these benefits were seen without reducing the total number of daily calories consumed by the animals. So basically, we're talking about an intervention that costs no money, is easy to do, and can potentially reverse disease if the human data is half as promising as the mouse and fly data. So what do we actually know from humans regarding time-restricted feeding? Well, there are only a few studies published, and they are very small, but they give us some clues. One study looked at a less stringent change in eating pattern. These researchers compared what happened to healthy, normal weight men when they gave up nighttime eating versus the same men when they ate with their normal eating pattern. Giving up nighttime eating meant that the men fasted from dinner until breakfast, basically 7 p.m. until 6 a.m. the next morning, which was just an 11-hour fast for 2 weeks. Interestingly enough, during the 11-hour fast phase, men lost almost a pound of weight, and when they didn't fast at night, they gained over a pound of weight. In another very small pilot study, researchers compared the weight and body composition changes seen in men and women fed all of their required calories as 1 meal a day in the evening, or 3 meals a day spaced throughout the day for 8 weeks. They were given enough calories to maintain their weight, and the food was prepared by researchers. This was to make sure that they were all given the same amount of calories. Those that ate only 1 meal a day lost about 3 pounds over the 8-week study period. But those who had their normal 3 meals a day maintained their weight. But the more interesting observation was that those in the 1 meal a day group lost 4.6 pounds of fat as well. So the dietary pattern had a significant effect on their body composition. This study was really too small to extrapolate to generalizable results for the whole population, but it supports the hypothesis that reducing meal frequency each day can have a positive impact on body composition with respect to reducing fat. The researchers did not observe positive benefits on other health parameters like blood pressure and cholesterol in the 1 meal a day group like we saw in some of the other fasting studies. A recent study supports the hypothesis that time-restricting feeding has a positive effect on body composition. Researchers compared the changes seen in men who ate during a standard eating window, with breakfast at 8 a.m., lunch at 1 p.m., and dinner at 8 p.m., to men who condensed their eating window to only 8 hours a day from noon to 8 p.m. Both groups still ate 3 meals a day. This study was done for 8 weeks. These men were healthy, well-trained bodybuilding types and were given weight training workout regimens that were the same for each group during the study period. Even though the men did the same workout and ate the same calories and had the same meal composition, at the end of 8 weeks, both groups maintained their muscle mass, but the men who fasted 16 hours a day lost 16.4% of their body fat, compared to only 2.8% for men who ate 12 hours a day. Also, men who ate 16 hours a day saw a 36% decline in insulin levels compared to only 13.3% decline in men with a 12-hour eating window, although these declines in insulin levels were not statistically significant. So why does time-restricted feeding work? The short answer is we really do not know. In human studies, we see that sometimes people reduce the calories that they consume when the hours are limited. And although that could explain some of the effects on weight loss, it doesn't explain the other effects like those specifically on fat mass reductions. Scientists believe the effects have to do with our internal clocks and how the metabolism of food affects those clocks and other processes that our body performs. So you may be thinking, well, I only eat a few hours a day, and this won't really make a difference for me. Well, it turns out that if you have not been meticulously tracking your food consumption patterns, you are probably wrong about how many hours of the day you consume calories. And if you are wrong, restricting those hours to 8 to 10 per day would likely help you. One of the researchers who is doing a larger human trial on this method actually looked at this. Basically, what he did was to have regular people download a smartphone app. There were about 156 people, and they were told to record their food and the times when they ate over a 3-week period. It turns out that if you define eating as consuming calories, whether it is a drink or a snack or a sit-down meal, that actually more than half the people ate for over 15 hours a day. In other words, they were basically only fasting when they were asleep. Most people were not eating 3 distinct meals per day like most people think they are, but rather they were eating 3 to 10 times a day. Given this information, shifting to a defined eating window can make a big difference for some people. The researchers who observed this pattern did a small study to see if reducing the eating window would make a difference. They recommended that 8 obese people who were part of their monitoring study and who were eating over 14 hours a day reduce their eating window to 10 hours for 16 weeks. The result was that at the end of those 16 weeks, 7 out of the 8 people lost weight, and the weight loss was an average of 7.2 pounds. Importantly, a year later, these people were continuing their time-restricted eating pattern, and 6 out of 7 had not gained the weight back. These people who did the intervention reported improved sleep and improved energy. So even if someone did not lose weight, they felt better. This was a really small study, and so it may not be able to be extrapolated to other populations. But a really large epidemiologic study was recently published that supports the conclusions of this study. The Adventist Health Study 2 is a study of a relatively healthy population of 50,660 adult members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in the U.S. and Canada, who were followed for over 7 years. The researchers assessed weight change over 7 years and how the length of overnight fasting, the number of meals, and other factors affected the people's weight. Their finding was that people who had longer overnight fasts, in this case greater than 18 hours, were likely to lose weight over the 7-year period compared to people with 12 to 17 hour fasts. People with 7 to 11 hours only fasting tended to gain weight relative to people with longer fasts. Interestingly enough, these researchers also found that the number of meals per day correlated with weight gains as well. People who ate more than 3 meals per day, which includes snacks, gained more weight compared to people who ate 3 or fewer meals per day. And the weight gain directly correlated with the frequency of eating. This seems obvious, but this is very counter to the advice often given for people to eat 6 small meals per day. Unfortunately, with respect to weight loss, there is very limited scientific evidence on the impact of time-restricted eating on humans. The human studies in the form of randomized clinical trials just have not been done or are not published, but they are coming. I recently searched the clinicaltrials.gov database to find out if people are specifically studying the 16-8 diet for overweight and obesity, or to treat metabolic disorders like high cholesterol and diabetes. And in fact, they are. There are currently 12 different trials registered and ongoing. That's the good news. But the bad news is, because of the time it takes to get data collected, analyzed, and published, it will be 2 to 5 years before we in the public know the results of any of these studies. For me, the science and the list of potential benefits was already strong enough from animal studies and observational studies, and the risk of harm was so low that I was willing to try it.